Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coach Unblocked, part of the Unblocked Podcast Network. I'm Coach Fred Riley here tonight with our guest, Chris Parker, Parker Resources, as that's .org, correct?
.org, yes, sir.
.org out of Georgia. Our show tonight is brought to you by Back Porch Publishing. They published my book, Bo Don't Know Me. Appreciate them and all their support and all the things we're trying to get done here. Chris, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Appreciate you having me. Excited to talk a little football.
Yeah, now your bio says you're University of Alabama alum. Is that correct?
Yeah, don't hold that against me, Coach.
So where are you from?
I'm actually from a place Foley, Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah, from South Alabama. My family's still a lot down there, and I went to University of Alabama, played football there at Foley. Maybe crossed paths with you early '90s, and went to University of Alabama, graduated from there, and just got a job, coach football teaching in Georgia because Georgia paid more and I needed a job. It was middle of the year, so I actually thought I'd probably go back, move to Foley or Baldwin County or somewhere, maybe by the end of that first year, or, whatever. And it just never happened. I was very fortunate to go to a place called Sequoia High School and worked with a guy named Sid Maxwell who taught me a lot. And I was just kind of kept staying one more year, and that turned into 7. And got an opportunity to be the head football coach at Chapel Hill High School in Douglasville on the west side of Atlanta. Okay. And that team really struggled, and they had really good players. I really got it at a great time. We were able to do a few things offensively that were unique for that time period, that aren't at all unique now, but a lot of people in Alabama, because of my Alabama connections, I knew a lot more about throwing a football and doing some of the stuff that they were doing in Alabama. This had been in early 2000, mid 2000. And so we were able to do a few things that worked. And the team was 0-10 year before I got there, and we won 9 games in that first year. At that point, was one of the biggest turnarounds ever. And it wasn't really anything that I did, but it just propelled me into, I guess, people kind of knowing who I was as a coach.
And, well, now let me ask you now, let's go back to your Foley upbringing. Now, what year did you finish at Foley?
96.
96. So yes, I coached against you 94 and 95. I am one of the only 2 Robertsdale coaches to have ever beaten Foley twice.
Yeah.
The 94 year was,
I believe we got stopped on the goal line
4 times from the 1 down there.
If I remember right, Coach Nazary reminded us of it often.
Jimmy Nazary, it was fun, and I actually spent all day with Keith and Lester Smith and talk option football and single wing football, and had a great visit with those guys. And of course, our semi-pro team that we ran for 5 years, Darius Powell, a Foley legend, was our quarterback, and actually we sold the team to him and his family, and they're going to continue it over in the Foley area and keep it going. So
really, small world.
Yeah, it is really happy about that, and so play for Jimmy Nazary. Okay, now did you?
And Keith Smith actually probably more than anybody influenced me into starting to be a coach. I was probably going to go to law school or something. And Coach Smith, I was just an average football player, Coach. Y'all didn't have to scheme against me, but I did enjoy helping the middle school team that Coach Keith Smith was coaching. And I just kind of had an aptitude for it, and he was very encouraging to me to continue doing that. So I did a little bit in college, and then, it just kind of was something I really kept going back to. And so really getting into that had more to do with being around those guys at Foley than anything, even though I've never gone back to coach with them, and I see them often or talk to them. And but I love Foley. It was a great place to be. And really always thought I'd be back there. Like I said, I got a job in December. I graduated in December. I was one of those guys couldn't
get done in
time.
What was your degree?
What was it? Social studies or secondary ed, social studies. I was going to, like I said, I was more political science stuff, and I was able to swap that over to secondary ed, social studies when I changed. And I graduated in December and just got a job in Georgia. And just kind of stayed there, but stayed in touch with all those guys. Really, proud. And I tell people, Kenny Stabler and Julio Jones and me, we all about the same. All went to and Alabama, right?
Aaronville, wherever over there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we all went to the same high school and college, but I don't think there's anything else similar between us. But I was very fortunate. I've been around some good people, Coach, and I know you were too. And anybody that's been successful as a coach has been around some good people. Sure. Usually starting in when they were a kid, all the way up. And I know you were around some good ones at Auburn too. And it's just the impact that you're able to have. And I hope that's what people listening will get if they're a coach right now, is just, if they're hearing anything they want to hear from me, is that the impact they're having, they may not even realize, right. And we're able to touch people in all 50 states now and help coaches and athletic directors in all 50 states, in part because of some of those people that, from 40 years ago and 20 years ago and all in between. So you never know who you're touching and who you're making an impact on.
Well, talk to us about what you're doing now. I mean, what led you to getting out of coaching and becoming doing the resources that you do for coaches nationwide now, and how did that all come about?
Well, after my time I was at Chapel Hill, we were pretty good. Then I got a job in Pickens County, Georgia, which is in the mountains, in the North Georgia mountains, outside the metro area. And in order for them to get, they wanted me to come there. It was a little bit smaller school. I've been in the highest classification up to that point, and a little bit smaller school, but one school in the county, and they just kind of built the program around how I wanted to build it. They're very supportive. We got there, a team had been 1-9 year before they started winning. People were more supportive. The community really bought in. Next thing you know, they've forced me to be the athletic director. A little bit after that, I'm the district athletic director. Right. I work at the central office. Now I got Title IX and workers' comp and facility use, and I'm still coaching a football team.
Okay.
So like they wouldn't, I never stopped coaching a football team, but I got away from that everyday football coach stuff, that you just kind of being around the kids. And 2017, we had 2 kids pass away in car accidents, different accidents, and devastating for our program. Went through that 2017, and by 2018, my youngest daughter was born in 2017 too. So I didn't like my wife having to go through some of the stuff we had to do before. I didn't love that I didn't have the same probably intensity that I needed from watching 2 different grades on our team that year had teammates that passed away. And I thought, we went undefeated in the regular season. We were really good in my last year in 2018. And I thought, well, I'm probably just going to go work somewhere else. I'd been there a while at that time. They didn't want me to leave. So they offered me a job to stay at the central office, but do more things. Next thing you know, I'm director of human resources. Now I'm right under superintendent. And so I got a real unique role where I'm pretty high up in the food chain, and I didn't go the traditional path. I just kept getting more things to do. And so when that first happened, and I wasn't the AD anymore, and I wasn't the football coach anymore, I was the human resources director. I had people that knew me to be very organized. That was our way to get an advantage, is just we were very organized. And now a lot of people are, but 15, 20 years ago, they weren't, Coach. And so we were able to beat some people 15 or 20 years ago just by really being organized in our preparation and really being intentional with how we did things. And so people that knew me knew that, and they would ask me for stuff all the time. Hey, send me your list of coach responsibilities. Send me that list of situation stuff you guys practice. Send me whatever. And I always did. But for whatever reason, this is going back about 5 years ago, but I started, I said, you know what? I'm not using this stuff anymore. It doesn't have to be a big secret. I'm not just going to send it to Coach Riley and then not send it to anybody else because he's my friend. I'll just post it on my social media. I had just started a social media for myself. There wasn't one, but I didn't have any social media. Didn't really know much about it, but I had one for the football team when I was football coach. So I knew it just enough to be dangerous. Well, I had given all that up. So I started my own little social media thing. And I said, well, I'll put these couple things up here, and if anybody wants it, they can have. Well, it backfired because then I had about 100 people message me that day wanting me to email them the same thing I was trying not to email out 2 or 3 times.
Right.
They had to email out 100 times. And I said, man, you know what? So I did it the next day and the next day and the next day, and it just was the same thing. And what really stood out to me, Coach, and this was a real lesson I learned since I coached. When you're coaching, obviously you're not at other people's practice.
Right.
You know, I mean, maybe you get to go once in the playoffs or something
Sure.
like that. You're not seeing, you really have no idea what everybody else is doing. And it was unbelievable to me, maybe more so in other states in Georgia and Alabama. It wasn't always Georgia and Alabama I'm talking about here now. That's just where I knew people. But in the other states, just how many people didn't have a list of situations they needed to practice, or how many people didn't have a real kind of clear version of a practice plan broken down, practicing both ways, or just something that I really kind of thought was fairly simple because the people I learned from had those things.
Right.
And so I really kind of took a call into it. And of course, COVID happens right after that. And that makes it even more of these things are possible. And so, you know, people like, hey, you need to start a podcast, because I was putting all this stuff on social media. And so I did. And it just kind of took off, and had a bunch of good guests on. And you know, we were just fortunate that people listened. It was COVID, and they probably, you know, whatever. And so then the encouragement from that was, well, you need to write a book. And just like yourself, I wrote one. And, you know, I say these things took off, but they took off for me. You know, I don't know if they took off for John Grisham, but it took off for me. And so everything I was able to do was encouraged that it was actually helping somebody. I mean, hardly any of it's lucrative. You know that. None of this is lucrative. But it is something that seems to be helpful. And so I just kind of maintained and tried to tweak some things. And what it's really given me, Coach, is the ability to continue my role as an educational leader, which I don't put on Twitter all the time. My job is to work with the superintendent and to lead the school system in many different aspects, you know, and main one is human resources. So that's my real job. But you know, coaching took more. People may not want me saying this, but coaching is lower on the food chain than the main central office people. But coaching took a lot more hours, man.
Sure.
So I have more time, and so I'm able to kind of do things like this, put together different calendar. Recently put together a calendar, put together some surveys, just stuff like that that can help people. And if people use them, they can. If they can't, if they don't want to use them, that's fine too.
Right. And you would consider what you're doing basically consulting, correct? I mean, consulting business.
I guess so. And I do spend most of my time with this is informal. You know, it's somebody just messaging me, hey, Coach, what would you do if this or this or this? And I just try to help them. Like, I haven't been going anywhere and doing any major consulting. Like, I'm not sitting around watching people's film for them and telling them how to run.
Right.
But I have been trying to help some people do better with, you know, how they prepare and how they be a leader, and how the further you get away from it, the more I've gotten a little bit more away from the X and O's of it. I mean, I love to talk about it, but it just seems a little dumb if you hadn't coached a ball game in 4 or 5 years. But the leadership traits are the same. You know, the football stuff's the same. And I've just been really surprised, Coach, at how that's been necessary for so many people that they just they probably didn't have the same upbringing in coaching that I had, working with Sid, Michael, and Ray Face, and Al Morrell, and people that I worked with when I first started just taught me how you're supposed to organize things and how you're supposed to lead and structure things. And so try to stay more on that, and then recognizing people. We've done a lot of recognitions where we're just saying, hey, these people had a good week, and, you know, this is somebody you need to know. I've been amazed at how, you know, how receptive people have been to that. You know, just, you think the coach, everybody knows them in town, but I don't know if many people ever just out of the blue say, hey, man, this guy's doing a good job. And especially the assistant coaches, and especially maybe some. So try to do as much of it as I can. It's really just me. My brother helps me a little bit, but it's so it's not as big of a company as it looks. But it's but we try when I have some free time. Look, Coach, you wouldn't know it because I'm from the Gulf Coast, but I suck at fishing. I suck at hunting. I can't play golf. I'm not good at really any of that. So when I have some free time, I have spent way more time with my kids and my wife. But when I have some free time, I do try to find things that we can give back to coaches. So that's been really good to keep me in the game, but also, you know, I can advance the other part of my career too.
Sure. And that's awesome. And you're exactly right. Now, I mean, you know, you know, if you we're not fortunate enough to have been coached by really good people and been around really good people and staffs, and where you could be that sponge and learn how to do things and learn how to build practice schedules, learn how to build an off-season schedule. I mean, all the things, a year-long calendar, all those things that if it hasn't been demonstrated to you, how you're supposed to know. I mean, you don't. And middle school coaches probably are the ones that I found who need it the most. Because they a lot of times middle school coaches are just sort of left to hang to dry down there, figure it out on their own. Here's our offense, here's our defense, go to it. And one of the things that we did in Mobile County was instituted middle school coaching clinics every year. And the school system paid for those guys to come in, take a day, and just spend time with the high school coaches. And it didn't matter that it was your middle school or not. You worked to help everybody for the betterment of the game and for the kids. And you're exactly right. I mean, I know 2001, 2002, somewhere along in there, I put together, sort of like you did. I put together a year-round coaches manual, athletic director, head football coaches manual, because I put it together because I was an assistant coach. I had been a terrible head coach. And so I was but I knew one day I'd be a head coach again. And I wanted to be ready for interview opportunities.
Right.
And when interviews came along and I met with a committee or whatever, I'd be able to hand them, here is my plan. And so they would know, this guy knows when reconditioning needs to be done. And this guy knows, all the things that you don't know if you hadn't done them.
Well, and they end up taking up so much of these new head coaches' time that don't understand that that's part of it. It's not that the football part's not really important. It's that you end up being the surprises take too much of your time, and you're not able to manage your time well, so you can focus on what formation you want to run into the boundary on 3rd and 6. I mean, you got to get to that, but I've been amazed at how much people don't know that. And I mean, I think it's getting better. And I think things like you do and things like we're trying to do is enhancing that. I think people have more opportunities now than they did when we were coming up, but they've got to take advantage of those opportunities. And if they're not at the right practices, if they're with people that aren't doing those things, then how would they know?
Sure.
Other than the advanced.
Exactly right. That's one of the things that the Alabama Football Coaches Association, which I was in on the ground floor of when it first got going. And that was one of the key points about that was, look, we don't want to be Nike Coach of the Year, Glazier Coach of the Year. We don't want to bring in these head coaches. There's a place for that from all over the country and get their philosophy on running a program. Now, and because these guys need how to build a practice schedule, how to run a summer program. We also need to get assistant coaches up in front of audiences and speaking to prepare them to be head coaches. And that was when we started that organization in 2005. I mean, that was the focal point. I mean, it had to be about the membership and growing the membership and growing football in the state, not paying, the head coach at Notre Dame to come down and sit and listen to him, and then he sends, sends an assistant coach down to do the talk, that kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And that's
Alabama's association is excellent, by the way. And Georgia, we take pride in Georgia and being good at a lot of things, but we are looking up at what you guys are doing with your Football Coaches Association. You've done a really good job. So everybody that started.
Well, it had, the Football Coach Association in Alabama, and what happened in this state and is that, unlike you, guys like me, for the most part, didn't go into administration. We coached till we croaked and or retired or whatever. And then administrators in high schools in the state are now non-coaches. And home ec teachers. I mean, whatever it is.
And it's a lot here too.
And they run, so they can do a really good job of running the school, but they have no pulse on athletics. and all the things, and schedule building to build your athletes' schedules and coaches' schedules around the seasonal things that are going on, but the best coaches in the state who did not go into administration, they were heavily involved in the Football Coaches Association. And that's where they did their administrative work. Jack Wood, Terry Curtis, and Buddy Anderson, and all those kind of guys. So we're getting educated by the best, but but administratively, the world changed when our generation did not go into administration.
I think the group 50 years ago just didn't get paid, and so you saw them going from football coach to principal.
Sure.
And the pay got a little bit better over time, enough where you didn't see as much of that. But I'll tell you, that's a problem everywhere. The support for the coach is probably down compared to what it used to be, but the expectations are probably up, more from parents as much as anybody. But the expectation is you're going to have all these things. You're going to be everything to everybody, and the support's not always there. And so we see that. I mean, sometimes I'm put in a horrible situation where I have to, not be the old football coach.
Right.
but it's hard. It's education in general is tough, pulling in a lot of different directions. And I'll continue fight for these high school football coaches, because it's one of the few things in the school system where you can succeed and you can fail. You can go through a lot of real life lessons, things that really will carry folks when they get older. That I think the opportunities for that are less and less at school than, and so football still is one of them.
No question. We had they honored our 2005 team at Davidson back earlier in the year, and had a reunion of that team, and the 2 or 3 guys, of course, most of them were there. We had a great visit and all that, but you had the 2 or 3 guys that came up and, Coach, can I talk to you for a second? Sure. And come up and hug your neck and say, Coach, I am so sorry for how I acted. when you cared about me, you pushed me, you were demanding of me, and I was just a jerk. And now I look back on it and realize, gosh, that man loved me. That man wanted what was best for me, and I fought him tooth and nail all the way. And so yeah, you find out that 18 years later, he actually did get it. I mean, you don't realize it, but he did. And a lot of us, a lot of times this side of heaven, we ain't gonna know.
You never know as a coach who you're impacting. So, but I always say, unfortunately, it's only fun when you win, and you can make a much bigger impact when you win.
No question.
So it's not all about winning, but that team winning allowed you to do more with the character stuff, with academics.
No question, because you're allowed to stay around long enough to actually truly make an impact on the school culture. If not, you're just the nicest guy they've ever fired. And,
and that's what we're seeing. And if you're a coach, your job is to do a great job, learn the game, execute, win some games, so you can be that guy to as many kids as possible.
No question.
And that's those are the things you see as you're not coaching and get a little older, maybe, that I didn't necessarily appreciate as much when I was younger and was doing it. But I hope people will hear those messages from you and not have to learn that the hard way.
I've enjoyed, even with the semi-pro team we had, it was a spring league. So I would go out and watch some fall practices, and really enjoyed doing that and watching, see how, guys did things. I mean, that's the, being and I know you would agree, being a lifelong learner. I mean, I coached 43 years, and there was never a year that I didn't go visit somebody, even if it was just to find a way to coach one thing differently, just how to get better at whether it's linebackers' eyes on the counter tray. I mean, you find somebody, they do a really good job of defending this play. Let's go see what they do. And it was, and so that was one thing that I was always very, very proud of, is we immersed our staffs in other ways people did things, or just to learn how to just pick people's brains all the time, that we never had all the answers.
Haven't you found that it's much easier now, though? Aren't you jealous of some of these guys now, though, with all the social media and all the videos and things like this?
Oh yeah.
You can just pick up things that you had to work to pick up years ago.
I tell you what, the best offensive football team I ever coached was 2010, and I stole everything that we did off of YouTube watching Oregon. And Jeremiah Masoli. I knew that we were an option team, but we had been an I option team and a Georgia Southern option team, and we'd done things a lot of different ways. But I'm watching them on TV one day. They're just running the triple option. I mean, they're running the counter trey one way and the speed sweep the other way, but he's reading the 5 technique. That's just the veer. And with it handling it sideways and loading the linebacker with a slot. And I'm like, this is pretty good stuff here now. So I studied them suckers, and nobody down here had ever seen it.
Yeah.
We scored 500 and something points that year, something like that. And it was just, but that's where the social media helped me, because I saw them in one game late at night one night, because you never got an Oregon game on TV hardly a regular day. I thought, I'm going to see if I can find something on these guys. And sure enough, there's all their games on YouTube. And I studied Oregon. And
it's really advanced the game. And you're seeing it go the other way now, where defenses, we're seeing more and more, especially you see in the NFL and college, especially in high school, seeing the defenses catching up a little bit, making it a little harder to do some of that stuff. So I think what you might see, Coach, it'd be funny, but you might see some of your old offenses coming back.
More tight end, more running the ball downhill.
People don't really know how to defend that like they used to,
No, you're right. And guys and I know you did, if you played for Jimmy Nazary, the generation of coaches that cut their teeth running the option and defending the option, those guys know how to fit run game from a defensive standpoint better than anybody, because they understand gap responsibilities and how to fit and how to play assignment football on top of it. And then it gets, then this last generation has grown up on the spread, and which was what you were referring to. And, with Rush Probst going to Kentucky and bringing it to Alabama and all that went on there. And so many it went to that, and that they struggled defending over time. Everybody's working on defending the spread all the time, and all of a sudden running downhill and running the option and running the midline was, they had one answer. Once you figured out what that one answer was, you could just attack them and waylay them. And
the size of the kids, with the different what they're asking a linebacker to do, back in the 90s versus the early 2000s versus today, really 3 different things. And what they're asking the inside backer especially to do.
Right.
So, I mean, you're seeing teams that can really get downhill and get up on the backers, double team, combo up, however you want to do it, gunner under center, power counter, triple, midline, wing tee, whatever. The people that can do that are becoming a little more in vogue, because people they don't know how to run some fit. They don't know how to support from the secondary, stuff like that. That was the way I learned football. Like, I learned football going against, we drew up the I formation and we fit everything to that on day one on defense. I mean, that's what we did.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to, I think it was 2008, South Alabama, when Joey Jones was over, brought me over to teach their staff the midline. And because we're running the midline every way known to mankind. I mean, every way you could run it, we were running it. So I went over and worked with them and showed them how to run the midline. And it's funny, the next time I saw Joey, he said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The Saints brought us over to them for us to teach them how to stop the zone read." because they have no idea how to fit the linebacker backside on the zone read to land the quarterback, and because they're all just chasing the play and the quarterback's coming out the backside, hitting his head on the goalpost in the NFL. So
it's really an evolving process. It's what makes the game great, but it's an evolving process. But I'll tell you what I learned doing this role I do now, and even talking to you now, is that's the fun part. And you better cultivate this other relationships, better do all this other stuff too, so you can get to do that. So you can get to worrying about midline, because I see this is just a tough time of year. It's a tough time of year for us in my world, because I got I've been here so long now. I just got a lot of friends, and some of them going to change jobs, and some not going to be their choice. And that's tough. But I want to see people be successful. The way to be successful is do what you did when you went to Davidson. What I did when I went to Chapel Hill was I had a plan going in. So anybody listening wants to be a head coach and is not, they need to get in there and get a plan. Even if that plan changes over time, you get in there and get you a plan, put together what you want to do, put it down on paper, tweak it every now and then, read through it, show it to some people, speak it into existence, because you better have all that stuff before you can even do the fun part. I think people put that backwards. They want to just talk about the scheme. We started talking about football. We got excited. That's all they want to talk about, and you're not going to get to play chess with people if you're not building those relationships, you're not communicating, if you're not working with administration, with parents, the booster club or whatever it is that your deficiency is. Work on that so you can eventually get to the fun part.
Well, and it's fun, and also part of that is having enough structure in your program that you see the big picture and you don't go chasing rabbits.
Yeah.
And because so many guys get sidetracked, especially if they have a little bump in the road and you go chasing this or chasing that, and you just
giving up on stuff.
Stick to your knitting and do what you're know what you believe is right. I always tell our coaches, and I remind them every now and then, on Sundays, I don't need another way to make 4 yards. I mean, don't bring in a play as you got something that we light the scoreboard up on. I want to see it. But we have our 8 fundamental run plays that we run off of every possible formation known to man. We're not going to add another one this week, because we saw so-and-so run it against them and it worked.
Right.
So-and-so has been practicing that play all year long. We got 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday work days, and then all of a sudden we're not going to be as good running our stuff if we're chasing that other way of making 4 yards. And
that's actually really good advice, because that happens a lot. That happens a lot. But as you said, you have enough success that you're able to stay somewhere long enough that I know the guys that have worked for me over the years, I'll get a kick out of them. The guys that are head coaches, they'll send me their practice schedule, and it's the same practice schedule we had for 14 years. I mean, the times are exactly the same. They send me their pregame warm-up times breakdowns. It's exactly the way we did pregame warm-up for 14 years. Our halftime breakdown, every to the minute, and that's really cool. I mean, I know you see that. It's like, I love it right there. I mean, that's just, as you get older, you appreciate that, to see that you not only on the individual, the players, but you impacted the coaches. Yeah, and it lives on, Coach, and that's the thing. It lives on, and my time ended maybe a little shorter than I ever dreamed it would, but a lot of stuff has lived on.
Sure.
It does make me happy, and it's just a great profession. I love working with coaches, and glad I got the opportunity to keep doing it in some capacity. Yeah.
Well, I've had a couple of guys, it's funny, the consulting stuff, I had a call here a couple of weeks ago from a good friend of mine who's considering it. He's talking about setting up some type of consulting where, you actually go and visit, especially smaller schools that don't have quite the resources, and help them work through some things and build practice schedules and that kind of stuff. There's a need for it.
There's a need for it. Yeah.
It's just, coaches sometimes though are just so hard-headed. I mean, we're a hard-headed group now.
They have to want it. That's why the first step is they have to want it.
You just about got to, but that's one of those. I think that's one of those advertisements you could make on social media. May not nobody ever respond to. Hey, I'll come to your practice. I'll come and help you evaluate your program. And there's no likes on that tweet.
I found there's not a huge push for that. Most of the stuff that we do kind of anonymously. I mean, I say anonymously, but you get these resources, you get some documents, you work through them at your pace, or you get some videos, you watch them at your pace. I watched Tony Franklin stuff. You mentioned Rush, and I watched Tony Franklin stuff a long time ago on video. So I think people are more apt to do more stuff like that maybe is in the privacy of their own time. But I'll tell you this is what I've learned. I'll tell you this, and I can leave you. But so I've done like 400 something podcasts like this, and I've talked to guys who've won, hundreds and hundreds of games, and guys like yourself. But talking to Bob Lattiser at De La Salle, he won 300 something games, but he won 180 in a row or something at De La Salle. And Coach Rankin at Alcoa, or not at Alcoa now, but Coach Gary Rankin is a friend of ours, and he's won 400 something games and like 19 state championships. You know what's always been interesting is those guys always want to learn more. They are asking me questions.
Right.
They want to know. They're like, "Hey, tell me what you heard." And the guys that won a lot less than that don't want you telling them how their team can get better.
You're exactly right. I mean, that's
what I've learned talking to these successful guys.
Right.
They still want to talk about the JV team. They want to talk about practice, and they want me to tell them what I've heard is the new thing.
Right.
Every one of them, same kind of thing.
That's cool. Exactly. I mean, I know the best of the best coaches and all the coaches conventions and stuff that I've gone to, coaches clinics I've gone to, are either still on the front row with their notebooks out, or they're still drawing on napkins out by the restaurant, and or even up physically. Show me, hey, where you put your hands right there now, and where are your thumbs? I mean, just.
And those are some of the guys that forgot more football than I ever knew.
And
they want to know what I know,
Yeah. Well, that's a great place to be. There you go. That's fun. Yeah. I mean, get to communicate with those kind of guys. That's neat. That's good stuff.
Yes, sir.
So how can our folks, any of our coaches, get your information?
Go to just go follow at Parker Resources at any social media, or parkerresource.org. They should be able to contact me through any of that. Okay. And like I said, most stuff I do is free. I mean, you can listen to podcasts for 3 or 4 days in a row with different topics. There's a couple of documents you can buy, $5 here, 10. I mean, most of it's relatively inexpensive just to see who wants it. But if anybody needs something, they reach out, I'll try to help. I really will. Maybe not at Robert Stale, but everywhere else.
Go Bears. Go Bears.
No, I'm just kidding, Coach. I'm still a little salty about that goal line stand.
I hear you. Oh, shoot. Well, hey, Chris, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. I know you're an hour later over there. Get back to your basketball game, and I'll keep reading your stuff on Twitter. All right, man?
I appreciate it, Coach. Stay in touch.
Thanks, partner.
Take care.
All right, bye.